And so since 1980, the rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, all that stuff has skyrocketed. And not just a slow increase, it's like dramatic. 95% of the advisory board involved in shaping the USDA guidelines had ties to food and pharmaceutical companies.
So they're going in for heart surgery and they're getting carbs and sugar after their surgery, after
With
just
no
having a heart
protein.
attack. Every diet-related disease has gone up despite these great guidelines that the government has put out. So type 2 diabetes, PCOS, heart disease, and cancer.
Welcome to the Hot Takes and Hard Truths podcast, where we believe in unfiltered health, healing with real food, and unapologetic freedom that can only be achieved through the salvation of Jesus Christ. Your hosts, Jen and Nora, are close friends who found each other online despite the constant noise within the healthy living social media space. Their passion for natural health and Jesus, and their penchant to lean into the hard topics of the day, led them to want to share their thoughts and ideas with others who are also in search for meaning and answers. Please welcome your hosts, Jen and Nora.
All right, so today we decided for one of these first educational episodes kind of thing, not educational, but whatever you want to call this category, is we thought we'd start pretty basic. We're talking about food, right? So the government, the current administration has this, I guess you could say, task force of MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. And it's bipartisan to some degree of just really figuring out like what is the root cause of so much chronic health disease in our country. And bottom line is a lot of it's going to be food. So we're just going to talk about the food pyramid and what its origins are. We'll talk about what our opinions are. Does everybody need to follow the same guidelines? All that kind of stuff. So we're going to dive in.
And it's sad that this is such a bipolar topic. Wanting America healthy again should be on the forefront of everyone's minds. It
Oh,
should
yeah.
be a positive thing. We want to correct all of this chronic illness, and we finally have someone in office that's willing to ask the hard questions, willing to address it. It's been upsetting on social media seeing all of the backlash about wanting to take out the food dyes, question certain toxins going into our
You've
bodies.
seen people have backlash about the food dyes?
Oh, yeah.
Please share.
So I'm in a bunch of baking groups,
Okay.
and they live off of their food dyes, and they don't understand that there are healthier, more natural alternatives. Maybe they're probably more difficult to find and they are more expensive, but the backlash I've seen has been primarily in the baking groups.
So are they scared there's not going to be any dyes for them to bake with? Like
Correct.
what's
It's scared of not the no dyes. They don't believe that there are any harmful additives in the dyes. They haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet.
which is crazy because aren't we like one of the only countries that use artificial dyes? Every other
I believe
country
so.
they use beets, turmeric,
The
blueberry,
natural.
whatever it is. Yeah, all the natural stuff from real stuff, real sources. That is
Yeah.
wild. Sorry, I interrupted you, but that just blows my
No,
mind
yeah.
because it's one of the most obvious ones, I feel like.
Well, and it's also being associated with the Republican Party. People are just against anything he says, anything he questions. They
But
think,
that's the thing, though. I have to, like, I see people that are not conservative or Republican, and they're all for making America healthy again. Like,
really?
there are some prominent names. And
Wow.
some of these names, I don't want to say that they're very, very public people, so I don't want to put them on either
Yeah.
pedestal. But they haven't declared their alignment with one party or another, but
Mhm.
it's very clear and you know their history of where they've stood, and they've stood staunch Democrat for a long time, and then their eyes were suddenly opened during these past 5 years of everything happening. And
Okay.
so one of them hasn't said one way or another, but you just get this vibe of like, I think you kind of. But I have seen some Democrats not turn tides, but kind of
Be open-minded?
yeah, yeah, where they're like, this. I'm still this Democrat Party. I'm still part of this Democrat Party, but maybe this one I don't really like that. candidate, or I don't like what they're standing for, so I'm going to go this way. So in my mind, I think they're more independent in that sense.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that when some results come out with some of these trials that he is running, maybe more people will think more positively about him and come together under this umbrella of making America healthy again.
Yeah, I agree.
That would be a nice goal.
There's just
So
too many.
speaking of
Oh yeah, speaking of, well,
this
I could
food,
go
yeah,
so.
we could go off on all these tangents. But the current food pyramid, you and I have listened to a few podcasts recently about this and the history of it, breaking it down, where it came from, why it's been put into place. So, would you like to give a little history on it?
Sure, I'll give a few bullet points that I have down, which are kind of the main crux ones. Is so the dietary guideline. I believe we have My Plate now, right? So
It's
which is
not really
it's not
advised, it's
that much
there.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my understanding is in 1980 is when the dietary guidelines were the turning point of chronic disease. That's when they came out, and that's when chronic disease started to increase. So the first official US dietary guidelines, they were released 1980, and they promoted low fat, high carbohydrate diets. And I forgot the exact amount, but they actually have specifically in there refined carbohydrates as well. So you couldn't just say plants and vegetables and fruits because those technically have carbohydrates. Dairy technically has carbohydrates, and those are healthy for you, but they were specifically 8 to 10 slices of bread a day, like that kind of thing. And I've recently seen a reel by a dietitian, I think it was last year, where she had a plate of 10 slices of bread. And she's like, this is how much, I did a remix of it. This is how much you're supposed to have a day. And I was like, what?
Diabetes on a plate,
Yeah.
depending
Yeah.
on the bread type.
Oh my God. That's like 10 slices is like half a loaf.
Oh my gosh. I
That's a
can't
lot.
fathom eating that much. My
No.
body would revolt. But yeah,
That's
it says 6 to 7 servings of grains plus 3 full servings of refined grains per day.
okay. So that's what it was. Yeah.
3. Yep.
It just blows my mind. So since 1980, the rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, all that stuff has skyrocketed, and not just a slow increase, it's dramatic. And there's a lot of things that shifted in 1980. So I'm of the mindset that food is like 80% of the total of whatever's going on. Um,
Yes.
but there's a lot of other things that contribute to the toxin bucket and everything happening. So in 1980, CDC data shows that obesity increased from 15% in 1980 to over 42% today. And my understanding, I heard Nina Teicholz talk about this. She's a great expert at all of this. And she said the last time they measured was 2014.
Yes, it
So
was
we
43% obesity rate then.
Yeah, so we can safely assume it's definitely higher between the lockdowns and everything that happened there. Many people just sat at home and ate and had Uber Eats and stuff like that.
DoorDash, yep, all that
Yeah.
healthy food.
Yeah, yeah. So it's well over, and that's just obesity. We need to make that part clear.
Yes.
That's not metabolic syndrome. That's not insulin resistance. That's just severe obesity, and that's not overweight. So it was very drastic. That's one of the things that's happened. The other bullet point I had was that grain based recommendations were driven by industry lobbying and not by
Yes.
science.
Follow the money, right?
Exactly. 95% of the advisory board involved in shaping the USDA guidelines had ties to food and pharmaceutical companies. This is found in Public Health Nutrition. And if you guys need any of these sources, I'll put some of these sources in the description so you
We'll
can't
link all
just
the
say,
websites
yeah,
where we've gotten some of our information.
yeah, so you don't have to just claim that I'm pulling this out of my butt or something. But yeah, it's there were the big ties, and you mentioned follow the money. So you want to name like some of those companies, like those big name companies
So
that were
me
on the advisory
being
board?
Yes, so me being in cardiology, the whole American Heart Association is what I've always followed. For Heart Month in February, we always promoted all the guidelines that American Heart Association said. Well, come to find out, Procter and Gamble, who is known for their seed oil production, launched the American Heart Association in 1948 by donating a lot of money. And so they were able to curb the suggestions based on these seed oils. So they promoted these seed oils instead of red meat. So cut out the saturated fat, but take these seed oils instead. Get rid of the bacon, grease, and the lard, but take these highly inflammatory seed oils that oxidize in your body. So
Exactly.
that's the big one that stuck out to me, Procter and Gamble.
And then there's even like General Mills and Kellogg's and Pepsi.
The
They,
cereals, yes.
yeah, and they all fund research and they sit on the advisory boards and lobby Congress, and they profit from keeping the grains and the seed oils and the processed foods just front and center because it's just all tied. I don't know if we can find the graph, maybe we can put this on the video, but there's
I've
a
got it. I
graph.
just pulled it up. Yep.
You know what I'm talking about? It's like
It's
this
right here.
web.
I'm gonna show it just because.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we're on the same page. I love this. Yes, these partners. So you see the center where USDA. Why don't you describe it? Because you have it in front of you.
So we've got all of the big chip companies: Frito-Lay, Fritos, Lay's, Ruffles, Cheetos, Doritos. They
And these are
fund
like the companies in the middle closest to USDA, right?
okay, so closest is Frito-Lay, which then is subbed down to all of the other chip companies.
Right.
So Frito-Lay Ocean Spray, which is just drinking sugar, right? I
Pretty
believe.
much.
Dole, so the little fruit cups, right? I
Mhm.
believe that's what I think of.
Another
Welch,
drink too.
Welch's,
Another one.
Sunkist. So we've
Another
got
one.
one of the most sugary canned sodas out there is funding the USDA.
So then you got to realize, like USDA, if they go against any, like they say, grains are not healthy for you, juices are not healthy for you, sugar, etc., they lose billions of dollars in funding because these are the companies that fund them.
Oh, and I can't believe I missed this one. Nestle.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. Because Kraft, I would think too, because Kraft is starting to buy out the healthy ones.
That might be a subsidiary.
Oh, okay. I'll read
Chobani,
it. Chobani,
Goya,
really?
yeah,
I mean,
but
some of
there's
these, and not all of them are going to be bad necessarily.
not,
There might be
no,
some
not
that
on the
are
same
okay.
level.
Right, right. But the majority of them are definitely heavily processed foods and very
20
top
plus
heavy.
ingredients. Yeah.
Exactly. Inflammatory stuff. Okay, this one I'm really excited to talk about. I'm going to keep referring to Nina Teicholz because I love her and she's an expert in this. She's done years of research into all of this stuff. But the demonization of fat, how
Oh,
it was based on Flawed study, which
yes.
was Ansel Keys' 7-country study. What he did, Ansel Keys did this study to figure out, I believe it was based on heart disease, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So based on heart disease and heart attacks, he took
Cholesterol.
a bunch of countries, measured their cholesterol, rate of heart attacks and heart disease and stuff. And originally it was like all over the place. There wasn't really a steady line. So he omitted a bunch of countries
Like
that
France.
didn't, yes, like France, that didn't support his saturated fat hypothesis. So that he only kept the 7 countries that were like, hey, look, the more fat you're eating, the more chance of heart attack.
Yeah.
So saturated fat became scapegoated, and then refined carbs and seed oils, they were flying under the radar. But that's
Yeah.
another one. Go
Yes,
ahead.
he was the big, he changed everything with fats. And it was once again money driven. But France was the place that was the big country left out, but they eat the highest fat and they have the lowest heart disease. So that didn't fit into his agenda. So he cherry picked what he was going to turn in with his studies.
Yeah.
And it says that sugar was also not considered as a possible contributor to heart disease. So he just left out all of the big things.
Do you remember the name of the doctor who was trying? Oh, John Yudkin. That was his name. John Yudkin was a British physiologist, and while Ansel Keys was trying to push the agenda that saturated fat was causing heart attacks, John Yudkin was arguing that sugar, in particular fructose, was the primary cause of heart disease, but he was shut down. Like, his voice was not heard. Have you
Money
heard of
wasn't
him?
there. I'm sorry?
Have you heard of him?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's another interesting one to look up because he knew what was happening early on. I was just Googling it and looking because I was trying to remember his name.
And it's
All right.
crazy. So the base of the food pyramid, where we should be getting most of our calories and nutrients, is from these grains and these processed foods that ultimately lead to heart disease. So for the past, 45 years, we have been told to follow to get sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some people will argue that, well, majority of America at least doesn't follow the guidelines.
Mm,
But here's the thing. They do, because they're mostly buying processed foods, which has the grains and,
correct.
the wheat and stuff like that. They're not buying a lot of, although plants I think have increased some. I know you have the statistics there, but
Yes.
here's the problem. The US guidelines, while it's made for the common person, it's primarily made for agencies to know what foods to give whoever they're serving. So public school systems,
Mm,
all their foods, a lot of, and this is where they say social justice, help the minority. A lot of those who are impoverished and rely on food stamps and such, their kids get food at the public school, and it's not nutritious. It's just garbage because it has to follow the USDA guidelines. Then there's hospitals. That's even the bigger one, where sick people are going to get better. But when they're diabetic, most of them are diabetic. That's like a root.
yes.
I don't want to even say root cause because it gets deeper than that. But that's one of the causes why many people
Common.
get
Yes.
sicker. Yeah. Is now they're getting like French toast drenched in maple syrup with a cup of orange juice. Maybe
Post
if they're
bypass
lucky.
surgery.
Yeah.
Yes. So they're
Yeah.
going in
That's
for
what's
heart
happening.
surgery and they're getting carbs and sugar after their surgery, after
With
just
no
having a heart attack.
protein, no healthy fats.
Nothing.
Like, it's just so these
Protein.
USDA guidelines, it's a big deal to shift this to the right direction, which is turn it upside down, right? Like, we're not demonizing that bread is the devil. If it's prepared properly with the right ingredients, and if you're metabolically healthy, you probably can handle maybe some sourdough or einkorn flour bread or something like that.
Made at
But
home. Yes.
exactly, made at home. Don't go to Walmart and buy sourdough bread there. That's totally different. But yeah, it's like all these places that they're getting funded, dietitians and nutritionists, they have to follow the USDA guidelines when they are advising other people on what to do. So it's a big deal whether people follow it on their own or not. We clearly don't follow it. We do what we believe is right, which is, we'll have that pyramid here posted too. But the way the pyramid for a metabolically, what was it called? The metabolic health pyramid?
Mhm.
Oh, low carb ketogenic food pyramid for people with metabolic disease.
Yes.
Yeah. And it has on there animal based foods. It has your red meats, your bacon, your eggs, your cheese, your milk, your seafood, a small little section. I always tell clients dairy should not be the bulk of your meal, it should be a garnish.
Mhm.
So a little bit of that, and then the middle is all your vegetables and fruits and yeah, lemons,
Lower
lime,
carb fruits and
lower.
vegetables. Yep.
Yes, lower carb. And if someone's keto, they're going to be 20 to 50 grams. If they're low carb, they're going to be under 130 grams. And then the top of that has your starchy vegetables, the squashes, the carrots, the onions. People don't realize onions and carrots are actually pretty starchy. Basically, anything that grows underground. That's how I tell people to learn if it grows underground. Nuts and seeds, low sugar fruits, things like that. So that is what our food pyramid should look like.
Yes. Especially for anyone with, like you said, metabolic diseases, which is how much of the population at this point? Was
It's
it?
over 88% has metabolic disease.
Yes. So the pretty much every American needs to be on this reverse food pyramid.
Yeah.
And back to what you were saying, I wanted to bring up some of the statistics about have people been following these guidelines.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Beef consumption is down by 35%. So what should be at the base of our food pyramid, we've reduced it by 35%. Whole milk is down 79%.
Oh
Now
my God.
I don't necessarily agree with the pasteurized store-bought milk as being, that's just sugar-ridden, but that's taking away those healthy fats.
Right.
So healthy fats down pretty much 80%. Butter and
And they're not allowed to serve whole milk in schools
so
for
they're
many.
taking away, we'll go the cholesterol thing in just a second.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
butter and eggs down 18%. But seed oils are up 89%.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize it was
89.
that high.
Yeah. Fruits and veggies are up 20 to 35%. So yes, while we don't think that people are following this insane food pyramid, data shows unfortunately we have been.
We
And
have.
it's easy. I hate to say it, processed foods running through the fast food, people aren't just going for their burger patties unless they're you or I, people like us, but they're going to go for the sandwiches, the fast sandwiches and the french fries because life is hard and
They don't
fast
want to think
paced.
about what they have to make.
Correct. We can't, meal planning, prepping
Yeah,
takes time and energy and
exactly. And then also, okay, this I just thought of. Do you remember those shows of like couponing and being able to get the cheapest food?
yes,
So like that's another thing where some people do coupon and they try to make it as cheap as possible, but you're not going to get good coupons for
fruits and
meats and
veggies.
vegetables and
No,
fruits and the real food. It's all the processed stuff. So again,
mac and
that
cheese.
that society, exactly, the society that is impoverished and living on welfare and food stamps, what do they get? They get the junk that's going to keep them sick and them go to the hospital and their
Make the
doctor.
dollar last.
Yeah, exactly. So and then on top of it, like, okay, so then my mom has asked me this too. Why are those cheaper in the first place? And a lot of times it comes down to government subsidies, which was going to be my next point there too, is it's the food pyramid ingredients that are most like the grains, they get government subsidies to grow them. And if processed foods, certain refined carbs and your cookies, your chips, etc., the reason the ones with avocado oil are more expensive than the ones with canola oil is because those companies get paid to put in canola oil and stuff like that, and then that makes it cheaper for the consumer. They don't get paid to put the healthy stuff. So here's an example: Costco, their shredded mozzarella cheese. If any of you guys ever buy that, go look at the ingredients. In the past couple of years, they started adding canola oil to it. Why do you need canola oil in mozzarella cheese? I have never seen canola oil in any shredded cheese except that one.
Well,
Um,
and also pre-shredded cheese is really bad because don't they have embalming fluid in as well in that?
oh, I don't know. Do they?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I stopped
Oh,
buying pre-shredded cheese.
embalming fluid? Wait, what?
So it's to help the cheese last longer. So you see how long pre-shredded cheese lasts in your fridge, but a
Yeah.
block of cheese lasts a third of the time. So always buy the block of cheese and shred it yourself. It takes a little longer, but it's just the cheese.
So wait, what is that? What the anti-caking agent is? I thought it was just like potato starch or something.
Let
Oh
me get
no.
the name.
Now, oh my gosh, this is gonna kill me.
Yep,
I don't
I
buy shredded cheese often. It's very rare, but now I don't ever want to buy it.
But once again, it's easy and it's cheaper. Okay. While formaldehyde is indeed used in embalming, it's also used in cheese production as a mold inhibitor.
Oh, and
However,
they don't put formaldehyde. They put mold inhibitor in the ingredient.
the levels used in cheese production are much lower than in embalming fluid, so therefore, it's safe for consumption.
That's just like the trisodium phosphate. thing. Like you use trisodium phosphate for cleaning. That's an intense cleaner, but yet it's in like a bunch of cereals. It's wild. So, okay. I am not buying shredded cheese anymore. Thanks, Nora.
You're welcome. Take an extra 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And,
sometimes.
and you know who sold me on that? I learned that at a Pampered Chef class. Once again, they were selling their cheese grater, which I did
Mhm.
buy, and that's who I learned it from, Pampered Chef. And I learned that in what, 2014 or so. So I've been,
Yeah.
yeah, that was very eye-opening.
I used to shred my own cheese, and then my life took over, and I needed to find something like once. But again, we don't do shredded cheese stuff very often. Like even pizza, making our chicken crust pizza, I'll
Mhm,
do once a month maybe.
mhm.
But that one's easier to just take mozzarella and cut it and put it around. If I make chaffles, I think that's the only one. And that's, again, like once a month. I might make some of that. So I don't know. I guess that's one of those things you gotta pick your battles and see, like,
Exactly.
the worth. And it depends on the person. So,
So this food pyramid put a big cap on saturated fat thanks to Ansel Keys. However, we'll discuss this on another podcast. The need for saturated fat. Our hormones are made of saturated fats. So they removed them, and yet our body needs these nutrients. They also put a sodium cap on the guidelines. Obviously, when you go to see a cardiologist, they say avoid sodium at all costs. However, our bodies need that as well. And the sodium cap has been shown to increase the risk of heart disease.
mhm.
So, this food pyramid is really doing the opposite of what the American people think. And it says even if you follow the guidelines 100%, you will be at a nutrient deficit.
That line was mind blowing when I read that. So people are always like the RDA guidelines, this and that. And it's like, that's the absolute minimal that you need to survive. Why do you want to be at the minimal? Don't you want to optimize and live the best life
Thrive.
you Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to thrive. Exactly. So that was mind blowing when I heard that part. I actually wrote that down too. But you mentioned about hormones, and this is what one of the things you and I began to bond over was
Yeah.
fertility and hormones, and how high carb and low protein, low fat diets they wreck blood sugar and hormones. Like we see some of these influencers, maybe they're plant-based diet or, whatever the case is, and they look really good, but they're like 23 years old, they're still young, and they're working out a bunch, and you have no idea what's under the hood. You don't.
Right.
On social media, you don't know if they're having a period every month. You don't know if they're miserable with tons of cramps. You don't know if they're developing insulin resistance. Some people it doesn't show up in their weight. Some people it shows up differently. I
Yep.
had a client who she owns a swimwear line, so she needs her body to look good to sell her swimsuit. But she came to me with severe reactive hypoglycemia and insulin resistance. But she wasn't super overweight. It was like a very small amount, but her body fat percentage was very high in the
Hmm.
40%, which
Wow.
for her small body frame meant she had not much muscle at all. So that was a very interesting one. I think that was one of the first ones that kind of blew my mind. Usually it's women that are overweight that come to me and I was like, whoa. But yeah, we worked on it. We did a low carb, we found what worked for her, and then her hormones and everything began to balance out. But that's my point, is that she's on the cover of all these swimwear lines. People probably think she looks good, but she had like no muscle and
Mm.
it was all fat. So
It's very interesting when we do the opposite. So, speaking of hormones, when I increased my butter intake, I became a butter muncher a couple years ago. And when I focused on getting my fat to a certain percentage, I tracked my sex hormones and everything improved. It did
mm,
take a couple of weeks, but I did notice when I was getting what was it, a tablespoon of raw grass-fed butter per meal, my hormones improved, my sleep improved.
yeah, because
So,
you're also like, hey, here's the food I've been asking for
yes.
forever. I do like to preface this a little, or not preface this because you've already spoken it, postscript. Because, and this will be another episode I'd love to talk about sometime. But some people, when they hear something is good for you, then they overdo it. And
Yes.
so this is one thing I find here in the keto and carnivore space is they're like, well, fat's good for you, so make it 90% of your caloric intake. And I mean, there are some benefits to do a temporary, very high, strict ketogenic, 80% fat kind of thing temporarily. But just because fat and protein is good for you doesn't mean you need to overdo it and that's all you eat, right? Like it's okay to have some plants and fruits. They're not going to kill you. Stop with that, please. There's proper methods of preparing vegetables and stuff where you can get rid of a lot of that, the plant toxin stuff. Again, another episode. Are plants trying to kill you?
But I took your advice the other day, by the way,
What?
and, I've been struggling with some emotional eating stuff. I bought some organic strawberries, organic blueberries. I kept them in the house when I was feeling like I was, struggling. I popped in a couple blueberries, had a couple strawberries. I was good to go. So they are, correct me if I'm wrong, they're very low in sugar, low in carbs. However, they have just that taste of sweetness that can help that trigger in your brain, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's satisfying. And it depends on the person too, of why they're craving it. Like sometimes if you do have a cortisol disruption or you have elevated cortisol, having a little bit of carb can help calm it. And when I say carb, it's something like that. So that's why you're running to it. Your body's looking for that. So yeah, this is like a tangent off of it, but I think it's really important is I'm done with the demonizing of vegetables and fruits. I enjoy, those small clementines, like the small oranges.
Yeah. Mhm.
I have like four of them a week, like 4 out of 7 days a week. I will have that as my dessert. And guess what? I'm actually still in deep ketosis. Granted, I'm doing some other
That's
things too
so
that's
impressive.
helping me that. I think the HBOT's kind of help. The hyperbaric is kind of helping me stay in ketosis too. But depending on the person, it might work for you. And for me, similar to you, it takes the edge off where I'm not running for chips and cookies and stuff. Not that we have a lot of that in the house, but I do have an 8-year-old that we buy healthy chips and healthy cookies that doesn't have junk in it. What else we got? Do we got anything else on this topic?
So another couple statistics, carbs are up 30%, fat is down 20%. Guidelines have failed to prevent any chronic disease or protect health in America. Every diet, this was fascinating. Every diet related disease has gone up despite these
Hmm.
great guidelines that the
Yeah.
government has put out. So, type 2 diabetes, PCOS, heart disease, and cancer. Everything is through the roof. So, 5 years ago, 2020, which I'm sure this number has even gone up, which is terrifying, 88% of adults had one or more chronic diseases.
Yeah, it's definitely, it must have gone up by then, since then, 88%. Although there's a lot of us that are coming to realize what the truth is. And so maybe some of us that during that time realize what we need to eat and reverse the metabolic. So it might still be around the same number.
Very true. That was the great awakening for me, for probably 3/4 of my friends. I didn't know about it prior to 2020. Thank you. So, very good point. Yes, that's when a lot of this MAHA movement came into
Mhm.
play was 2020. Don't force things on me. How about we look at our food? We look at how our kids are responding to food. So, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. So I guess we could end with what should the real food pyramid look like?
Meat first.
Yes. So the base, we'll put it up here again if you didn't see it earlier. The base
Yes.
is animal proteins, beef, eggs, fish. Beef is really important for B vitamins. That's the only place you're going to get B vitamins. That's why vegans and vegetarian, well, not the only place, but the primary source. That's why a lot of them need to supplement with B12 and folate and stuff because they're not eating their eggs and beef. So energy levels, things like that. Beef is, I've noticed myself, I will crave, if I do chicken and pork too often, I'm like, I need 3 days of beef.
Yes.
That's my thing. Fish is great for the omega 3s, helping with the inflammation. Eggs is great for folate. And obviously they have way more than just this. It's just certain aspects. Saturated fats. all of that is the base, along with, if you can do veggies seasonally, if you can get them organic, that's the key part, because that's another topic is about glyphosate and how they're spraying all the veggies and fruits. So you want to get it as organic as possible. I mean, if everybody's budget's different, I usually tell clients if they can't afford organic, get a good wash on them. You're not going to get it all out, but you're going to get some of it off, like a baking soda wash, right? Where
I
you put a
use a
parent.
Young Living wash, but
That one's good too.
I'm sure there's just simple at-home washes you can make that are probably far cheaper.
Yeah, you can mix like baking soda. Well, it depends on what you're doing. Sometimes baking soda and water, sometimes vinegar and water. It depends on the vegetable or the fruit. Some of them will really mess up your fruits. I learned that the hard way.
Okay.
So if you can do seasonal organic veggies and fruits, then the middle I think would be your fermented foods. We didn't really talk much about that.
Oh, yes.
Fermented foods are so important for your microbiome. They have prebiotics that feed the healthy microbiome bacteria in there. Fermented foods, low
Kimchi,
glycemia.
sauerkraut.
Yeah. And then the rest of the veggies and fruits are there. I said veggies and fruits on the base. I meant in the middle with the fermented stuff. Sauerkraut, kefir, yogurt. If you can make yogurt at home, that is ideal because you can control the probiotics and prebiotics in it. And
And
then the
that's
top,
probably I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
that's probably super easy, inexpensive to make, right? I'm gonna go down we've
Yeah.
gotta talk about this on the side. I'd love to start making my own yogurt because I'd love to get rid of these expensive probiotics that I'm spending, a fortune on every month and
Yeah.
instead get it from foods because it's ideal to get these supplements. Instead of taking supplements, get it from food if you can.
Yeah,
And
I
you would
have
be
a
so good.
video that I make it, and it's super easy. So I have not tried making it with raw milk. I saw one person try it, and when I asked her, she's like, "Yeah, that didn't come out right." So I think there's a different special way to do it with raw milk if that's something that you want to do. But I buy the organic half and half. That's the one that Dr. William Davis usually recommends, is to do
Okay.
half and half, not just straight up milk, because it gives that thick consistency to have
I was
some of
just
the
gonna
heavy
say,
cream.
yeah.
Yeah. So I bought, I forget the brand. It might be Horizon. I don't remember, but it's an organic one for whatever that is worth. And I do the whole container. Now I've started doing 2 containers of half and half, and I have my probiotics that I buy online. I use inulin as a prebiotic. Some people might need a different one. Some people are sensitive to inulin. It'll cause gas and stuff. But literally, it takes me 5 minutes to set up.
Love
I
it.
put it in a cup. I put like a half a cup and I get the prebiotic and the probiotic and I mix it really well. And then I pour the rest in this big bowl and then I pour them into mason jars, whatever that size is, that's this big. And it makes 6 jars. Those, so you picture if you were to buy an organic yogurt that was that size mason jar, it's going to be $10. I'm making 6 of them, and the half and half I think is $7 a carton because it's
Nice.
a big one. It's not the small ones. So so $14 for 6 giant mason jars of yogurt that I made, that I controlled, and it's nice and thick. You can control how thick you want it to. If you like the thick ones, you get.
Love it.
Anyway, I have a video about it so I can share. So yes, I forgot to mention the dairy. I feel like the tip, this is my opinion, the
Okay.
tip of the pyramid would be things like the root vegetables, the dairy. So like that original one we showed has the bottom is a small portion dairy. I feel like that could just easily be put on the top because we want to see dairy as a garnish. In America, unfortunately, our dairy isn't the best quality. And
Unless you know your farmer. I know
yeah,
my farmer and I
yeah.
have a herd share. So if you can, and I can even share some information about that in the show notes. So learn about raw milk, if that's okay if I promote that. Raw
Yeah.
milk, raw cheese, raw
Yes.
cream. You'll find that most people don't have that lactose intolerance or
Hmm.
gut disruption with these raw dairy products.
Yeah, because it has the probiotics in it still. That they're
Yes.
not killed off. So yeah, those kind. I mean, if you know it totally, but just going to the store and buying, your
Not good.
typical craft cheese and stuff. Some people do that because it's carnivore. If they're carnivore, they'll do that. But and there's so much autoimmune disease out there, and dairy can be one of
It's
those that.
inflammatory.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be the top. So base, animal protein, saturated fats. Middle, vegetables, fruits. Top, dairy, nuts, seeds, starchy vegetables, things like that.
And
Occasional
we
homemade
didn't
treat.
even mention on the current food pyramid, the meats are only 2 to 3 servings. So
A day
a
or
day.
okay.
So meat is only 2 to 3 servings a day compared to the 6 to 11 of the grains and the pastas and the cereals.
How much
So,
is a serving?
I'm sorry?
Is a serving like 3 ounces of meat?
That I don't know. It doesn't say on the food pyramid.
Okay.
It has meat as itty bitty compared to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
monstrosity of the sugar and the flour and the donuts. I mean, donuts are even on the food pyramid.
That's so crazy. I'm trying to see. So one serving is 3 ounces, about the size of a deck of cards. I'm like,
Like we've said, it is backwards and it needs to be flipped. And we are hopeful that RFK Jr. is going to make these adjustments and push that forward to where we are higher protein and getting in the healthy carbs instead of the processed killer carbs.
exactly. I think that was a great point to finish off. So awesome. I love this discussion. Y'all, whatever you have heard, if you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're on podcast, don't forget to like, subscribe. The more people that like it and subscribe, the more the podcast platform will push out our episodes and our podcast saying people like this stuff. So don't forget to do that. If you have a suggestion on a topic you'd love to hear us dive into more, throw that in the comments as well. We are here for you, and yeah, just having conversations about this.
Yes,
Cool.
fun.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.